I went to prep schools, and I was always put in the non-college English section because they didn't think I'd make it. So they concentrated on the bright kids. I don't know why it was exactly. I think I was pretty obscure in what I was, whenever I wrote, and also I couldn't spell and things like that. And then I went to a university theater school and couldn't stand it, and entered in myself, worked real hard and got some good grades and entered myself at Wellesley, which I couldn't have entered as a freshman, on the basis of the fact that they had thrown out so many freshmen and they had a few places open for transfer students. And at Wellesley, I took no English classes. I missed the one that you have to take as a freshman. So I never had Shakespeare and I never had English lit or American lit. And I just sort of read on the side. I grew up in a Southern family, and for some reason I had an obsession about the way people really are and about the truth and all. There were a lot of reasons for that, and the insincerity of my surroundings was always bothering me a lot because we were also told to tell the truth, and so we are taught to despise that, and you also despise the feeling that goes along with it. So you have to work all that out later. So I thought, well, maybe the theater is the place. I knew the church wasn't because I was experienced in that. No, Presbyterian, yeah. But I didn't know the theater much. And I thought, well, maybe that's a place where people can say what they really feel. And then when I saw it, I thought, "Ye gods, it's worse than the church almost."
So you think that's what you were looking for, as a place where you could say what you really were, or be who you
or
really
be who we are, or provide a place where people could be who they really are in safety. Freshmen, the college theaters where everybody's, preening and they're pretending to be someone else.
What did you study in college then?
Religion. And that was odd because I came back to it. They had at that time a very controversial department of they called biblical history. Real challengers, and a lot of people were all, turned around by it. Well, they were neo-Orthodox, and they didn't go for this liberal stuff that I grew up with. And that sounded they weren't being nice. And they were really getting to the heart of things. And I had never heard sin approached the way they did. And it was, that was interesting to me. Oh, so I threw the theater out. I went to graduate school on history of religions. Little by little, I got I lost the enthusiasm. And then one day somebody at the refectory at Union Theological Seminary dared me to do something. Well, I have been reading about the medieval mysteries. Some of them are very corny, some of them are gems. And anonymous people, the whole community involved. And the shipwrights were doing the Noah play and things they knew about. They were building ships all the time. So that arc must have been real interesting. They probably ad-libbed a lot of the real, hard facts because, it would come so naturally. Friends there were a little bit older. They were starting storefront churches in East Harlem. It was called the East Harlem Protestant Parish, which this was the beginning of it. So they were doing all kinds of experiments and things, trying to be able to reach people out on the street. They were complaining that nobody would come in. And so I went over one day, and what I expected was true. They were preaching sermons, like as if they were Tillich or Niebuhr, who were there at the time. I mean, those were the golden age. It was the golden age at Union. And I thought, so I was saying, I had just been to see this, and I was saying, well, you can't, that's like talking Latin in the medieval period. People who don't know Latin and can't read the vernacular either. Or so I say, you don't have to do it talking down to them. They aren't children. They've had a lot more experience than you or me in some way. Now the medieval people did this. I told them a few things. And then they said, that's real interesting. Why don't you try it? I went on the same block But at first I just took a big pad of newspaper print and crayons or something and started drawing on the tops of car hoods, and people started drawing on the sidewalks, kids. Somebody's car or some building. I did that several times, and it was kind of fun seeing all these papers all over the place, people drawing. And I took them home, and they were fascinating to see. So often there was just this grid, Every so often there was a little house in the country, and, so completely unreal. They ranged from, 7 to 17, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So then I decided that I'd have to make another step, and then I decided I'd pick at random the third house, the third floor, and the third door. And so I went to the third house, third floor, and the third door. The door opened a crack with a chain around it, so it couldn't open further, I saw 2 or 3 eyes. And they apparently expected somebody else. So the eyes just kept glued at me, and somebody'd say, "What do you want?" And I'd say, "I just want to see if anybody in here wants to draw or to paint." And they thought I meant paint the walls. So finally, they were giggling and carrying on and decided they were just curious. So they opened the door, and I began to go back every Wednesday, and I took a pad of paper, and I told Midge I was going to try to write a play about things that happened on this block. And that intrigued her. She was very dramatic anyway. But I noticed something very funny about this. This is in 51, and they were all very funny. I didn't know what it was. But anyway, they took me to their parties, and they'd prepare me ahead of time. Now, you watch out what this one says, and don't believe that one. And, they sort of give me an outline of what I would run into. I was sort of an exotic. I just wanted to get to know a family, not just to write a play. In a way, it's the kind of thought an anthropologist would have. What other ways do people approach life, and other than just the superficial look of it? I finally said, "What in the world was this guy talking about?" And they kind of giggled and smirked and told me it was heroin, and I never heard of heroin. Nobody else had at the time. And so I asked all about that. Then I realized that Midge was on it, and a lot of the people that wandered in and out, that they were stoned. That was what was the matter with them, but I didn't recognize it. So then I began to get very fascinated with addiction. And then I had to sort of struggle through the whole thing of whether you use art to convey a message. Because at that point I thought you did. I was not happy with the way it came out. They just weren't alive. When I was trying to make it propagandize, it didn't work. So finally the characters began to get a mind of their own, and I followed them, and that's when the play became. Yeah, that's interesting because I did have the characters in mind then. Later I developed the characters out of the available people, but then I was looking for people in the usual sense.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was different in one sense, in that once they fell into that character and it wasn't right for them, I'd change it all around to suit them. So it did come out of them, like it does in a way from these. They gave me a deadline to have it ready by, to do it in the street, the parish.
Oh, so you were still connected with them?
Yes, only when we were never on the street. I ran with a completely different crowd on 100th Street than they did. Didn't know from one day to the next when they would show up, strung out. Of course, there'd never been any street theater, then. So what I had to do was to say, now this, your play, you're the experts in this play, it's about this street, so let's just try it. And then it turned out to be one of those sensational things. Variety made a banner headline out of it, and Life magazine came. Jackie Robinson was flown in from a doubleheader. New Yorker, everything. I was really famous for about
15 minutes.
Right. And there I was, I thought, still bearing the scars of thinking I can't write at all. So just for fun, I sent it into the best short plays and got in the best short plays. Well, then I tried to get the parish to do another one. I wanted to write a sequel. But on the strength of all the publicity about heroin suddenly hitting all the papers everywhere, it was like the editor of Variety said, "This broke the drug story." So everywhere it was, and so it was a big thing for proposals and stuff. And so they all of a sudden got $40,000, which was an immense sum, it seemed then,
The parish got this.
to buy a farm in Westchester County near Peekskill, which they did. And all of a sudden, they were up to their necks with awash with people who were in real, 5 years later, that street was named the most heavy drug traffic in all of Harlem, maybe because of the play. I'm at the point where I feel like it's been demonstrated that the theory works very well. It's worked in in an urban area, low income. It's worked in a rural area. It's worked with kids. It's worked with adults. It's worked with people from different economic classes, all of them together.